The Night King left a gruesome message on the walls of the last hearth, and everyone has been trying to figure out what it means. And I think I have finally figured it out. Amongst some fans of Game of Thrones, there has always been this belief that the Night King is actually a descendant of House Stark. House Stark is an ancient northern house. The blood of the First Men and the Kings of Winter run through the veins of the Starks of Winterfell. The Kings of Winter were what the Starks were called before the last King of Winter laid down his crown at the feet of Aegon the Conqueror on the banks of the Trident 300 years ago. But King of Winter is an interesting title, because the main villain in Game of Thrones is indeed a King of Winter, the Night King. Throughout Game of Thrones, the White Walkers have been leaving symbols and grisly messages and weird, butchered art. All of these symbols must mean something, right? They aren't placed there for the fun of it. So let's talk about it. So we saw in Season 6 how the Night King was created. He was created by the Children of the Forest. The tree he was created at has this same spiral pattern. The place of his creation in the show is in front of this mountain, the mountain that's shaped like an arrowhead. This is the same mountain that the Hound sees in his vision in the flames. It is near this mountain that Jon and company encounter the Night King. During the Night King's creation, he is tied to a tree, a weirwood tree, the same tree from this image. At the time of his creation, the tree is beautiful, vibrant, and full of life. The bark is bone white. Remember that. The Night King is created by a shard of dragon glass getting shoved into his heart. It is in the same episode that Bran accidentally bumps into the Night King while inside a vision. We always focus on the fact that Bran is touched by the Night King, so we tend to forget the things that came before that moment. Firstly, we can see the spiral symbol with the tree in the middle, the same tree. This is the same place the Night King was created. This tree and this tree are the same. This is before he was created. This is after. But look at the front of the tree. Look at the tree itself. What was once so vibrant and full of life seems to have been drained of all its energy. It seems to have been depleted of all of its resources. The leaves are gone. Ice hangs on the branches. The bark is no longer white. It has turned black, like the very tree was corrupted with some dark magic. Whatever the Children of the Forest did to the Night King must have corrupted the very tree itself. This could likely be where they need to go to destroy the Night King. They may need to destroy this tree. This tree may be what he draws his powers from, and that's why it's turned black, because he's drained all the magic from it. This could be his house. He could live in a cave beneath this tree. Maybe Bran needs to kill him and trap his soul inside that very black tree. You may be thinking that, well, it's winter. Trees look like that in the winter. No, not weirwoods. Weirwoods have full red leaves all through winter. The tree at Bloodraven's cave still has full red leaves, still looks healthy and vibrant. The heart tree at Winterfell, all full of red leaves right now, just as vibrantly red as it is on a summer day. But back to the Starks and the symbols. Now, the reason I bring up this creation is because the creation is a big hint at what the message the Night King left in the last hearth means and how it ties directly to House Stark. The message is one of mockery and also one of identity. We've seen all of the spirals and all of the symbols. We've seen them beyond the wall when the White Walkers attacked the men of the Night's Watch in episode 1, and at the Fist of the First Men. We've seen the symbols on the stone where Sam finds the dragon glass, on the stump where Ned Stark beheads the deserter of the Night's Watch, and in the cave on Dragonstone. The spiral symbol and all of the symbols that the Night King and the White Walkers leave are directly connected to the Children of the Forest. The Children of the Forest created the Night King, so the spiral is directly connected to the Night King's creation. The message that was left in the last hearth is another creation message, but this time D&D took it a step further and gave a huge clue on the identity of the Night King. The spiral is the same spiral that we see around the tree where the Night King was created. Yes. At the middle of that spiral where the Night King was created was the weirwood the Night King was tied to. A dagger is shoved through his heart until his eyes turned blue. Now compare that to the scene with Ned Umber. Ned Umber is in the center of a spiral like the Night King was when he was created. Ned Umber is pierced through what looks like the heart or close enough to it. He's actually being held to the spiral by this dagger thing stuck into his body. And then, surprise, his eyes turn blue. Just like the Night King. It's very, very similar. It's so symbolic to the Night King's creation. But there's one huge clue that stands out to me. The White Walkers and the Night King could have chosen any person to use for their message, but the Night King specifically chose Ned Umber, the Lord of the castle. I think this was done purposely because the Night King wasn't just any man. He was the Lord of a castle. Not just any castle and not just in any region. Like Lord Umber, the Night King was a northern lord. His message was a desecration of his creation. Joe Magician did a really good video on the symbols, and he was saying that the Night King hates the spirals because the spirals and the symbols are important to the children, so the Night King kind of desecrates them. He slaughters people and uses their body parts to make these spiritual symbols because he hates the children of the forest so much. And I agree with him, but I want to take that a step further. I think he's actually desecrating his own creation. Yes, he hates his creation and his creator, so he mocks it. I think he is mocking his creation while giving a hint at his identity. A northern lord. A lord of some castle. More specifically, the blood of the Starks and the ancient kings of winter. There is so much solid evidence that points to this belief that the Starks have blood of the White Walkers and the White Walkers have blood of the Starks. In the books, there is a character named Night's King, not to be confused with Night King. The Night's King was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He reigned at the Night Fort, the oldest castle on the wall. It was here that he found a woman, his corpse queen, his Night's Queen with icy white skin and blue eyes. The interesting thing about the Night's King from the Age of Heroes is that Old Nan said that he is a Stark of Winterfell. Mayhaps his name is Brandon. So the legend of the Night's King definitely is reminiscent of the Night King from the show. Night's King was said to have been sacrificing children, and it was this that caused his brother Brandon the Breaker and Yoren, King Beyond the Wall, to join together to put him down. Does that sound familiar to you? A king of the north and a king beyond the wall banding together to defeat some kind of creepy icy person that's sacrificing to children. And there are plenty of other nods to the Night King being a Stark. LML has done a lot on this symbolism, the icy symbolism. Former Stark kings and lords have names like Brandon Ice Eyes and Edric Snowbeard. The sword of House Stark is called Ice. The home of House Stark is called Winterfell. Brandon Stark, Brandon the Builder, is said to have built an entire wall of ice. Their house words are winter is coming. Everything about the Starks is related to ice and cold, whereas everything about the Targaryens is related to fire. The Starks are to the White Walkers as the Targaryens are to their dragons. Unfortunately, the dragon remembers and the North doesn't. It is very likely that the Night King was a second son of Winterfell, given over to be converted into the Night King. It is also possible that the Starks of Winterfell had some kind of agreement with the White Walkers like Craster did, where they hand over their children in return for peace. Like a prince was promised to them every 1,000 years or something to that effect. Maybe it was every 500 years, I'm not sure, but the prince who was promised could totally mean that the White Walkers were promised a prince every so many years. And this is likely why there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. There must always be a Stark to assure the terms of the pact are met. Because should the terms not be met, we end up in the shit we're in now. An army of the dead is marching on Winterfell. The terms of this pact wouldn't be something that would be publicly known. It would be information passed down from lord to lord, father to heir. The Starks have to have some connection with the White Walkers, some blood connection. There are all these stories about Bael the Bard, the Warg King, all those stories about how the Starks mingled their blood with wargs and wildlings. But in the very first chapter of Game of Thrones, Bran 1, we get an interesting quote from Bran about Old Nan. He remembered the hearth tales Old Nan told them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. They consorted with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of the night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with the others in the long night to sire terrible half-human children. Did you catch that? Well, who are the wildlings? The wildlings are the first men, just like the Starks. They were just on the wrong side of the wall when it went up.
You lot came along and just put up a big wall and said it was yours.
My father was Ned Stark. I have the blood of the first men. My ancestors lived here, same as yours.
So whatever Old Nan is saying about the wildlings, it actually just kind of applies to the Starks as well, because the wildlings are now how the first men were thousands of years ago, when the kings of winter were still kings of winter. Cruel men consorting with giants and ghouls, stealing children, and their women laying with others during the long night to sire terrible half-human children. When the true kings of winter walked Westeros, there is no telling what happened there. But something happened. The Starks are directly connected to the White Walkers and sacrificial children. The Night King is telling us this in his message. He's saying, I am a Stark. I am a Northern Lord. I hate who I am. I hate that I was made, and I want revenge for it. If you look at the crypts of Winterfell, the Stark custom is that all the Starks are to be buried in the crypts. The lords are given statues and iron swords are placed across their laps to keep vengeful spirits in their crypts. It is said by Old Nan that the White Walkers hate iron. This is another oddity. The White Walkers hate iron in Rise the Dead. And for some reason, the Stark Kings need to be held into their crypts with iron swords to keep them from rising from the dead. I mean, the evidence for this is just so clear. I just think it's so clear that the Night King has to be a Stark. But not only is he a Stark, the Night King's blood likely flows in the veins of the descendants of House Stark. Some people are of the belief that the symbol looks like the Targaryen sigil. And I agree, I do think the spiral symbol does look like the Targaryen sigil, especially when it's on fire. I do think it looks like that. But the Targaryens did not come to Westeros until like 300 years ago. These symbols are ancient, like Dawn Age, 8,000 years old. These symbols are the symbols of the children of the forest. So what could have likely happened is this. So firstly, when the Targaryens came to Westeros, they didn't have a sigil. That's fact. They only made a sigil after Aegon decided to take over Westeros. But Aegon had likely been in the Obsidian Cave on Dragonstone and seen all the symbols, and he was like, hey, these are cool and ancient. It's 3 of them. It's 3 of us. That's a spiral. That spiral's cool. Let's add our dragons. That's our sigil. So in my opinion, it would be likely that the Targaryens were inspired by the Children of the Forest's symbols over any other theory. That's just what I believe, because I am convinced that the Night King is 100% a Stark.